How can we have confidence in the government's economic policy when we are in recession again?
How can we have confidence when we're in recession again? Diane Abbott.
Well, we can't. The Tory-led government claimed they had a plan. And like some crazed Victorian doctor, they argued the more they cut things, the healthier the patient would be.
But 2 years ago, the government was borrowing £1 in every 4 that it spent. And you know that from your personal finances. If you do that, then you very quickly run into serious problems. And we see some of those serious problems in other European countries. The only reason that we are not in the same kind of position that many other European countries are in is because we've actually set about trying to stabilise our finances.
Extreme austerity is being shown not to work. It's a disaster. You get into a death spiral. It's like a kind of Ebola economics, where you eat your own economy as you go down and down and down, and more people lose their jobs and less money comes into the Treasury, and then you have to cut even more. And what's really truly terrifying is the Institute for Fiscal Studies says there are still 88% of the planned cuts still to come.
You sit in the front here.
Thank you. I think Bill Clinton once said, "It's the economy, stupid." Would it really make any difference who was in government? And shouldn't really the British public accept the fact that times are tough, they're going to get harder, cuts need to be made, we need to balance the books. And you can all blame each other for as long as you want. But quite frankly, this country and Europe and the world is in trouble, and I think that we just need to accept that.
Nigel Farage, do you agree with that?
I do, actually. And I think the biggest myth in British politics and this whole debate at the moment is even the use of the word cuts. Let's just be clear what is actually happening with our public finances. I mean, to be one fair comment I'll make to George Osborne, he did inherit a dreadful economic situation from Labour. Last year, the British government borrowed £126 billion more than it earned. If we go on at that rate, our national debt will increase by a further 30% over the course of the next 4 years, leaving an absolutely massive, horrendous debt for us to pay back. So let's be clear, there are no cuts, we are borrowing massively. In fact, last month we borrowed nearly another £20 billion. So we are in a mess. We are in a mess, and it's not easy to deal with it, because if you cut it too quickly, it does stifle demand. And I understand that, but I don't think we're doing enough. Cutting back the public sector is a difficult thing to do. Even Thatcher failed to do it. But what Thatcher did do was produce growth. And why I have no confidence in this government is that they have no strategy for growth, and I don't see, when Miliband gets up at PMQs, that he's got one either. It's partly because we haven't got anybody on those front benches with any experience of real life. None of them have run businesses. We're being run by a bunch of college kids who are hopelessly out of touch. And the one thing I think we're missing is this. There are 4.2 million small businesses and sole traders in this country. They are the heroes of the nation. They're the people that put their necks on the line, and if you want to promote growth, you've got to remove the massive regulatory burden from their backs and get them out to employment.
The woman up there on the top left.
Yes. How can the general public ever have confidence in two arrogant posh boys who don't know the price of a pint of milk?
That's roughly the accusation Nigel Farage is making.
The decisions in the end have to be judged on their merits. One of the poshest people who's run this country was Macmillan. He is regarded universally as having done a fantastic job after the war, building houses, homes for heroes, so that we dealt with that. He came from
But he worked in business. He worked in business. He hadn't left university and become a researcher,
No, he hadn't.
You said wherever you come from, you get elected. The point is, they leave university, they go into research offices and become members of parliament. That's the problem.
It is for some people. It is for some people.
The man up there at the very back, in the middle at the back there, you sir.
I think it's a bit of a travesty when the Labour Party claim to represent working class people, because generally working people who are paying for the mess that you got us into, and you know we're the ones who are suffering. We don't want taxes to be higher for the richer, we want taxes to be lower for the poorer.
Here, here.
And that's over there on the left, you say.
The question is about how we have confidence in the government to offset
Can we have confidence?
this dip in growth. And the fact remains that from 1997 to today, there's been an average of 100,000 manufacturing industry jobs have been lost every year. And has been said by one of the panellists that neither party has had a strategy to deal with this. The way jobs have gone to the Far East, to Eastern Europe, and I think unless we can hear some plans about how to reignite British industry and manufacturing jobs, I think growth will be slow in coming.
Well, we could stop carbon taxes, couldn't we? We could stop CO2 emission targets that are driving manufacturing business out of Britain and straight across to the Far East.
All right,
It's absolute madness.
The danger is that if countries across Europe pursue George Osborne economics and just cut, I mean, we've seen a 25% drop in investment in housing, a 25%
in
drop.
Europe, George Osborne is borrowing.
25% drop of investment in construction.
We're borrowing.
If everybody does that, the economies of Europe will go into a death spiral. The Tories have a strategy for cuts. They do not have a strategy for growth.
So wait a minute, let's just...
Diane,
I want to come to Nigel Farage.
Look,
Nigel, your point...
There is genuine austerity.
You keep saying the government is borrowing and borrowing. Where is this money being spent?
Yes, well,
Diane says it's not going on
massively
housing.
increased social security bills, massively increased bills, well, foreign aid budgets, EU contributions, added all
pensions.
up. The point, pensions, well, of course, people are living longer.
That's exactly what
would you cut all these things? No, Nigel, would you cut all these things?
We have.
You suggest...
Can we get the narrative?
You're suggesting, as I understand it, that the increase in borrowing is proof that actually money is being spent in the economy.
I'm trying to dispel a myth.
That seems to be what you're saying.
Twice in this debate, Diana said the government is cutting, and she compared it to Europe. In Europe, under austerity, there are massive cutbacks being made, genuine cutbacks in government spending. Let's get it right. Frontline services in this country are being cut. Bureaucracy, incidentally, isn't. But as a government, as a country, we are borrowing vast sums every year.
You made your point.
In light of recent evidence heard at the Leveson inquiry, should Jeremy Hunt resign as Culture Secretary?
Should Jeremy Hunt resign as Culture Secretary in the light of the evidence heard at the Leveson inquiry, which suggested to some people that he was deeply involved in trying to make sure that Rupert Murdoch got B, Sky B?
I think one of the main questions we should be asking is how many more fall guys or scapegoats has the government got lined up to take the rap for their frontline ministers?
Nigel Farage, do you agree with that?
I do actually rather agree with that, I must say. I think the answer
with his
to the question,
point, I mean.
No, I do, and let me come to it. I think the answer is yes. The point's been made. Polly made the point. I often agree with Polly about these things. And she made the point that SPADs are in the pocket of their ministers. They work together. You know, they almost live together. It's that close a relationship. And clearly, this special advisor was sending emails to the Murdoch group before the announcements were made to the House of Commons. Entirely inappropriate, quite wrong, and that's why he's had to resign. Now, if Jeremy Hunt, who was in charge of that department and directly employed that person, did not know what that person is doing, he should resign on the grounds of sheer incompetence, and if he did know, he should resign on the grounds of complicity. But I think the answer to the question is he won't resign yet. Certainly not before the elections take place next Thursday. I think Jeremy Hunt is the human shield for the Prime Minister, because the big question here is just how close was the Prime Minister's relationship to editors of those newspapers and to the Murdoch family. And I suspect there's a lot more to come out during the Leveson inquiry. And I think Cameron himself, I mean, we've got Andy Coulson, we've got Rebecca Brooks, we've got the horse, we've got all of this. So I suspect that Hunt will hang on at least till next Thursday. But I agree with your sentiments. There's a lot more to come here.
Do you feel that moving low-income families from Newham to Stoke-on-Trent is a form of social cleansing?
No, I don't think this is the policy of social cleansing. I think it's a reality of a borough facing up to a problem and saying, look, rents are a damn sight cheaper in Stoke-on-Trent than they are in London. So that's what they're doing. But we have to ask ourselves, why is this happening? Well, one reason, of course, is that real estate in London is rising. It rose 7.3% last year. There is lots of foreign money coming in and buying property in London, quite a lot of it Greek money, incidentally, fleeing the Eurozone. But we have a shortage yes, there are X number of empty properties in London, but we have a shortage of social housing. But the real story here, and the one that nobody on this panel, I'm sure, would want to discuss or talk about, is the extent to which, over the last few years, because of an open-door immigration policy, so much of our... Well, just listen. You know, you can jump to your prejudices, but just think about this. In the borough... Well, if you want to listen... I mean, you know, question time is about debate. In Haringey and Ealing, over 50% of social housing has now gone to people who don't even have British passports. They're foreign migrants. And in fact, all you have to do now, if you come from Eastern Europe, all you have to do is to get a national insurance number, which you can get easily within a fortnight, and then you qualify automatically for social housing.
Nigel. That is not true. That is completely not true.
I talked tonight.
Nigel, that's completely not true.
I talked tonight to a major landlord in London, in central London, and he said probably between 50 to 70% of all new social housing requests are going to foreign-born migrants. And we need to ask ourselves a question. What is the social security system for? Is it for families that for generations have paid money into the system, or is it here for the whole of Eastern Europe? And that is a big debate that we need to have in this.
So you mustn't represent the position.
Okay, now
it is completely, Nigel's completely wrong to say that somebody can come here and in 2 weeks can be accepted by a local authority in London. That has never happened to my knowledge.
The rules changed last year, Simon, as you know. If you come on day one and say you intend to settle here, you qualify.
What you've said is completely untrue. The immigration rules are not as clear-cut as you've tried to explain them. They are in no way can someone come here from any country and within the first 2 weeks, without being a contributing member of the United Kingdom, get any housing.
I'm sorry. There is a huge difference between the rest of the world and the European Union, and we now treat people who come from Eastern Europe as being part of the same country as us, and if you come on day one and say you want to settle in Britain, you can claim job seekers allowance.
Even a French person who comes here on day one, if he has no job, he can get
non-contribution unfair and unreasonable to British families who paid in for years.
All right, now look, you've got two people contradicting what you're saying, Nigel. He works in the business, he says.
Yes.
You're saying he's got it wrong?
I spoke today to several people who work in this industry, and if you come to Britain and say on day one, I intend to settle in this country, I want to get a job, I need a national insurance number, you qualify for social housing.
All right.
Should the contraceptive pill be available to girls as young as 13 without prescription, as suggested by an NHS report?
Nigel Farage.
Well, the age of consent is 16 in this country, and I feel that if we just give out contraceptives to girls as young as 13 without informing their GP, but perhaps more importantly, without informing their parents, we're actually encouraging the breaking of the law. Now, the other choice is we bring the age of consent down to 13, but I don't think many of us would think that was actually a very good idea. So, no, I mean, look, you know, I know social habits change, but the idea that somebody as young and in many cases mentally fragile as 13 should be able to go and get contraception without any reference to her parents or a local GP, I think is a very bad idea indeed.
Chris Grady.
Well, Nigel, you say that contraceptive pills shouldn't be available through pharmacies to 13-year-old girls who may be, you say, incompetent, but the reality is that you may be allowing a 13-year-old girl to have a child. You know, they're not capable of, if they're not capable of getting contraception, they're not capable of raising a child. Surely getting contraception is preferable to that.
The very same people, like Nigel and Chris, who moralise about not allowing contraception or sex education for young people, are very often the very same people who make most noise about teen pregnancies. You know, we can't have it both ways.
Sorry, I haven't said that.
Chris Grady.
Yeah, I think that's putting words in our mouth.
From the back.
My question is to Nigel Farage. When a girl between the age of 12 to 14 decides to have sex, does she ask the consent of her parents? So why should the NHS...
No, but look, we have a law in this country that says the age of consent is 16. And my concern, and it's in answer to the previous question that the lady asked me here, my concern is that if we go down this route of dishing out free contraception, no questions asked, no parental information, perhaps no proper guidance or debate, that what we actually do is to send a message that the effective age of consent isn't 16, it's 13, and that may result in more teenage pregnancies and not less teenage pregnancies.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'd like to bring you in, but as Russell Brand said to a special committee this week, time is infinite, but an hour of question time isn't. An hour has come to an end.